Hey everybody, happy tutorial Thursday. Yes, this is our Thursday lunchtime tutorial. It is not a live merchandise sale. That was last night. I will fix that in just a moment. So welcome to the Beading Dream stream this Thursday afternoon. It is gloomy and gross here in Dallas. It is supposed to rain, I think, all day. It is incredibly, hi Barb, it's incredibly humid. Like my hair was bouncy when I left the house this morning, and now not so much. And so appropriately, right. So appropriately for today's crazy weather is again, no, stupid audio. Hold on. Okay, well, is that any better, Lori? Otherwise, I'm gonna have to try unplugging it and plugging it back in again. So meanwhile, better. Okay, cool. What? Why did it just randomly decide to change settings overnight while it was asleep? Did the computer have a bad dream? Did it have a bad dream about microphones and decide that it needed to exit the relationship with the microphone that it was currently in and enter into a relationship with another microphone, but actually it was, according to the audio mixer, in a relationship with two microphones simultaneously. So apparently my computer is polyamorous as far as audio equipment goes. Super exciting now that I know that. I mean, we don't kink shame here on the Beading Dream stream, but it's a little frustrating. But hey, at least we got our, hopefully got our crashy crash issues figured out, so that's, I'll take the mic issues, I think, over the crashy crash issues. So, today's tutorial is what I titled our Crystal Raindrop. The only reason I call it Crystal Raindrop instead of Crystal Suncatcher is because we already have a tutorial called Crystal Suncatcher. So, this is a fun one, first of all, to use any kind of like leftover random crystal beads that you happen to have. And second of all, if you happen to have or happen across one of these big ass crystal drops, or like a vintage chandelier prism, and that's an interesting effect. Hey look, it's my eye. A vintage chandelier prism. This is a really cool thing to do with it, because a lot of times these things are, you know, for a lot of people they're a little too big to oh, I see what the audio thing is now. Okay, got it. Anyway, so a lot of times these sort of vintage chandelier prisms and things for most of us are a little too big to be a pendant. Obviously, definitely, you know, only statement earrings if you're going to be wearing them for like 30 minutes. But this is a fun way to utilize them in a way that you can, you know, first of all, actually see them. You know, you can hang them somewhere and you can appreciate them on the regular, and they also, you know, look really pretty. If you know somebody who has a garden or a garden window or just likes shiny things, this is also a really great gift idea. So let's talk tools and supplies for this afternoon's tutorial. So you're going to need, for starters, to turn off your Heather cam, because your Heather's not here yet, and make this bigger. Someday, I swear, I will actually remember to do this at the end of the night on Saturday, but apparently last night was not that night. We still have hope for the future. Okay, so as far as tools and supplies, so supplies, you're gonna need to turn on your light so that people can see things. God, that light's not even focused on anything applicable. There we go. Okay, so you're going to need one large prism, crystal, chandelier, piece, drop, you know, one big sparkly thing. And you need your big sparkly thing in order for you to be able to use it the way that I'm going to show you today. You need your big sparkly thing to have just one hole right at the top rather than down through the whole thing. That's not to say you can't do this with something that's drilled down through the whole thing, but the way that I'm going to show you today is specifically for something that has one hole at the top. Also, interestingly enough, I decided to top coat my fake nails last night to see if I can get them to last a little longer, and my brush decided to shed a hair that then got, you know, immortalized forever in the top coat of my nails. So fun times in nail art. We're gonna call that nail art. Okay, so one big sparkly thing. You're gonna need a series of beads, and they can be crystal beads like these, they can be gemstone beads, really whatever you've got around hanging around that you want to use up is going to work great for this project. It works best if you have a variety of sizes, so I just so happened to have this graduated size crystal strand that I pull off the wall. That's going to work great, but seriously, this is a fantastic project for all of your leftovers, you know, because it doesn't even need, like, you don't even need to match necessarily symmetrically top to bottom. You know, like this crystal here is not the same color as its opposite number on the other side. So, you know, this is one of those projects that can be a little bit more freeform, and again, makes it a fantastic stash buster as far as leftovers go. In addition to your crystals, you are going to need, I like to throw in something that's, you know, a focal sort of bead, something that's a slightly different size, shape, or texture. So I've got these cool kind of silvery white Venetian glass beads I'm going to try to incorporate in my design today. I have a cone. Now the cone's not strictly necessary, but what I discovered when I did my sample is when you crimp your cable around your big teardrop, you know, you got two crimp beads right here. It's not very pretty. So the cone's a nice way to kind of hide that and make your whole thing look just a little bit more attractive. You are going to need 2mm by 2mm crimp beads in sterling or gold, your choice. You're actually going to need 4 of them. There's 2 more hanging out in my tray down here, and that's because, especially with the big old teardrops, there's a fair amount of weight on this piece, and so we want to make sure that it's secure. You need some heavy-duty stringing cable, so we're going to use some 0.024 inch diameter 49 strand stainless steel stringing cable, and you're going to need a little bit of 16 gauge wire, and I'm using 16 gauge bronze to make the hook. Now let's talk for just a second about stringing material for your sun catcher. So a lot of times when you get these, or when you see tutorials to make them, they have you string them on fishing line, which I get the logic behind that, because the fishing line is clear. You don't really want anything interfering with the colors and the sparkliness of your crystals. But there's a problem with fishing line, and the problem is it degrades in UV light. So if you hang your fishing line sun catcher in the sun, eventually it's literally just gonna, your fishing line is going to disintegrate under the weight of your beads, and you're gonna wind up with your entire sun catcher on the floor. So that is why I prefer to string mine on stainless steel stringing cable, even though if you have a super clear bead, you might be able to see it through. You know, I just don't want to pick my project up off the floor after I've spent, you know, a fair amount of time and effort making it. So that's just my personal preference. If you would prefer to use a heavy gauge fishing line for this, you absolutely can. Fishing line works well with crimp beads, so the construction is exactly the same. Also, if you just are having a crazy wild hair to make one of these right this second and you don't have any stringing cable but you do have fishing line, cool, go ahead, use it, it's all good. Just know that eventually your fishing line is going to deteriorate in the sunlight. So I'm going to take my stringing cable, I'm just going to cut myself about 1 foot of it. Now you can make this as long as you want, okay? You don't have to feel limited by any particular length. It's just about, you know, your space. So mine here from top to bottom is probably about 7 inches long, about 6 inches of beads, or 5.5 inches of beads plus my big sparkly thing. But I mean, you could totally make this longer. It just sort of depends on what sort of space you have in which to hang it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my cable and I'm going to attach it to, wow, it just started pouring rain. Like really pouring rain. Okay, so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to attach that to my large crystal drop, and that's going to be right through my hole there. So I'm going to take 2 of my 4 crimp beads, and I'm going to thread my crimp beads onto my stringing cable. So 1 and 2. And so once again, why 2 instead of 1? Because this teardrop crystal, it's heavy, and you know, if you've got a glass pendant, it's going to be lighter, but one of the things that differentiates crystal from glass is the fact that it is made with lead. What the lead does is it makes it denser and sparklier. That's why crystal is generally speaking, you know, prettier and sparklier than glass, but the lead also makes it heavy. Interestingly enough, there's also lead in cubic zirconia, which is why when I was selling fine jewelry, the way to tell if something was a diamond or a cubic zirconia was to weigh it. Once you got the hang of approximately what a diamond of a certain size should weigh, a cubic zirconia of the same size would weigh approximately twice as much. Alright, so I'm going to take my crystal drop, and I'm going to take my cable. My crimp beads are right there. I'm going to thread my cable through the hole in the drop, and then I'm going to thread the cable back up through those 2 crimp beads. And yes, the 0.024 cable will go through your crimp beads twice, so you don't need to worry about that. Make sure that it is kind of centered above your drop, and it doesn't matter so much on this one because this is going to be covered by our cone, but it's going to look better if your crimp beads are lined up like you see, so that when I squish them, they essentially line up with each other. If they're off kilter, then they tend to look, you know, obviously not quite as neat. And then this little extra part, I'm just going to trim that off. I'm going to try to trim that off. Apparently I picked the worst wire cutter in the entire store. And then you can do a good tug test. Just make sure that everything is secure, which it is. Alright, so there's my attachment. Now I'm going to take my cone and I'm going to drop that down over my attachment, and now I'm going to discover that I picked the wrong cone. This cone does not cover everything I want it to cover, so I'm going to go seek out a new cone, and I will be right back. Okay, seriously, y'all, I think it's raining everything out there but men. Cats, dogs, birds, frogs, like, it's really pouring. But I did find a cone. So I found one that is going to do what I want it to do, which is cover my endings and also kind of sit over the top of my teardrop. So there's that. Now is the fun part. Now I just get to sort of start putting crystals on here in whatever manner I want. So typically I like to start with a smaller one. So I'm going to start with like a 10mm, which I realize isn't small in the grand scheme of things, but for the scale of this project, 10mm is a decently small size. And then I'm going to, you know, go to a slightly bigger one, so that's a 12 millimeter, and then, holy macaroni, that crystal has a giant sized hole. I was not expecting that. Alright, well, all I have to say about this is I'm real glad that I'm the one who came in early to work today to stream, because I would not want to be driving or walking in what's going on right now. Heather and Carol are probably going to show up looking like drowned rats, which is unfortunate. Okay, so that's what I've got. So now I'm going to start playing around a little bit with this design. I'm going to go small again, and then I'm going to do a Venetian and another small, another Venetian, another small, and then I've got this one big honking gold crystal here. Okay, so that's pretty cool. So I think I'm gonna take it down to just one Venetian, because I think that's gonna get a little longer than I want. So I'm gonna put on my big honking gold crystal, and my big honking gold crystal I think is gonna be my middle. So that's what I have thus far. So I started with small, then I went to big, and then I went to my accents. I'm gonna have a big one in the center, and now I'm just going to mirror this pattern on the other side. But once again, you don't have to do that. You can just keep adding beads in random patterns until you get to the length that you want. You don't have to be symmetrical. There's no requirement for this project that you be symmetrical. It's not a necklace. I mean, and if we're gonna just go be philosophical about this, there's really no requirement for a necklace that you be symmetrical either, but it is generally speaking more accepted for jewelry that you have to be symmetrical. But you know, for this type of project, just put some beads on there. It's gonna be pretty, it's gonna be sparkly, and everyone's gonna love it pretty much no matter what. It's one of the great things about this type of project. Okay, so now I've got everything that I want strung on there, so I'm pretty happy with the way that looks. I've got my big cone at the bottom, and then I've got my kind of graduated size, my accent beads, my big one in the center, and now I'm at the top. So I'm going to set this aside for a minute, and I'm going to make a hanger for it. So making the hanger is going to involve my 16 gauge bronze wire, and I don't need a ton. I'm going to cut myself off about 6 inches. Thanks, Raven. I'm going to cut myself about 6 inches of my wire. It's probably going to be more than I need, and I'm just going to make a basic large spiral hook, and I am going to need a slightly bigger thing to bend around for the top than my round nose pliers. So I'm just going to grab out my trusty ring stick. If you don't have a ring stick, grab a dowel, a marker, like anything that's about 1/2 inch in diameter is going to work well for this. So I'm going to start by making a spiral. So I'm going to go to one end of my 16 gauge wire. I'm going to grab it with my round nose, and I'm going to make a loop like so. Then I'm going to hang on to my loop with my pliers, and I'm going to just start wrapping around. And then I'm going to move my pliers and wrap around again. Move my pliers, wrap around again, until I get this nice little spiral going on. I do want that to be flat. Mine really isn't right now, so I'm going to just take my chain nose and flatten that out like so, and then I'm going to make the actual hook. So this is where I'm going to take my ring stick, and I'm just going to place it against my wire and just roll my wire over my ring stick like so, and that's going to make my hook. So I cut myself a little more wire than I needed, so I'm just going to cut this off right about there. And then if you want to, you can just take that wire and bend it back. You can use your round nose or your chain nose for that part, and then compress it with your chain nose so you have just a little kind of nice ending for that. And then I'm going to take this hook and I'm going to crimp it onto my sun catcher. So again, 2 crimp beads on the top as well. That's just because of the weight of this. Normally I don't advocate using double crimp beads on anything, but this is, like I said, this is a lot of weight for just one crimp bead to hold, so I do not like it when my projects fall on the floor, so therefore I am double crimping because I am sometimes paranoid like that. Alright, so we have 2 crimp beads on there, and you can let them fall down, just make sure they don't fall inside of that top bead. Take your cable around your hook and then back down through your crimp beads. I have this weird part from one of my cutters we're not cutting off. You absolutely could hammer the hook for sturdiness, Lori. In 16 gauge it's not really necessary, but on the hook I did on my sample, all I had in front of me at the time was 20 gauge square, so that one, yes, I absolutely did hammer that one for sturdiness. The 16 gauge is sturdy enough on its own, but if you wanted it to be extra sturdy, you absolutely could hammer. You could hammer the whole thing, or really the most vulnerable point is right here on the curve, so you could also just hammer that. Alright, so now I'm going to take, now that I've fixed this so I actually can thread it, I'm going to take that down through my crimp beads, like so. And then to tighten it, I'm going to hold my hook with one hand, pull my tail with the other, and what that's going to do is it's just going to feed everything through so that I've got no slack. Now the good thing about something like a sun catcher is, remember I always say, don't make a bead stick, okay? When you're tightening things, don't tighten them so close that your piece can't curve. That's not important when you're doing this, because this piece is actually designed to hang straight, so you can literally pull all of the slack you possibly can out of that project, and then you're going to take your pliers and you're just going to smash your crimp beads flat. Trim off your excess, and I like to trim mine just as close as possible to my crimp beads, so just go ahead and trim that off, or in the case of these awful wire cutters that I grabbed, you're going to kind of gnaw at it until it separates. There we go. And there you go. And that's it. That's our beaded crystal raindrop, beaded sun catcher, whatever you want to call it. It's a really fun, easy project. Again, great gift. One of those things that, it's of course dependent on you having all the parts in, in stock, but it really is a great, great fun project. So that is it for the Beading Dreams Thursday, thanks Lori, Thursday afternoon stream. I am Allison from Beading Dreams in Dallas, Texas. We are an actual brick and mortar retail bead store that's currently being rained on here in Dallas. So if you're local in Dallas, you can always come check us out here on Lovers Lane. We're here Monday through Saturday, 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. If you are not local in Dallas, of course you can find us on this channel, twitch.tv/Beading Dream, 5 times a week with complimentary tutorials. We stream Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday at 6 p.m. plus Thursdays at noon with different friend projects. Tonight is Torch Thursday. That means I will be doing my first ever engraving project on the air. This is our engraved crocus. I'm like, what flower did I name it after? Engraved crocus pendant. So it's going to involve sawing, engraving, and soldering. It's going to be a fun class for me. I hope it's going to be a fun class for you all as well. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get ready to open the Beading Dreams on Lovers Lane. Thank you so much for hanging out with me on our Crystal Raindrop tutorial. I hope everyone has a great day, a great Thursday afternoon, and we will see you all back on this channel, twitch.tv/Beading Dream, tonight at 6. Bye!